Seseri, who leads Fairhaven Capital's investments in marketing, tech, digital media, IoT, and robotics, will lead a discussion on how technology will change marketing. Joining her is Assaf Baciu, co-founder and head of product and engineering at Persado, president and CEO of Affectiva, Nick Langeveld, and SocialFlow co-founder, Frank Speiser. Welcome.
Good morning. That's a hard act to follow because I don't think we're solving refugee crisis. However, what sort of I was struck by is the notion that whether it's a refugee and life-threatening crisis or marketing tech or marketing challenge, we're all fighting for deep engagement and attention with our audiences. So maybe with that as our highest level, I'd like to first give the panelists a chance to briefly tell us what each of their companies does. With that, perhaps Frank, you can start?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everybody. So I'm the co-founder of SocialFlow. We started in 2009. We're headquartered here in New York, right up near Grand Central. And what we do is we basically trade content for attention. And we have predictive technologies that figure out when you join the conversation or where you target your message. And if you read the news or any type of entertainment content today, there's probably almost a 1-in-1 chance that it was published through SocialFlow. We're the world's largest media distributor right now. And what we do is we use that to figure out what people want to pay attention to, and it learns how to find where people will be engaged and under what context. So,
Assaf?
Yes, hello, my name is Assaf. I'm a co-founder of Persado. Where is Brian? I want to tell something to Brian. We automate creativity to better inspire humans. Automate creativity. We generate, with machine learning, language for direct response communication that drives more action. We find the optimal combination of words and emotions that get people to act. And in essence, we eliminate the guesswork of copywriting, which means that you can get more response from an email going for whatever reason to whatever audience with this technology.
Nick?
Great, so I'm Nick Langeveld, CEO of Affectiva. And we have, well, our mission is to essentially emotion-enable experiences. We have technology that developers can work with that allows them to tap into emotion signals that can be built into marketing technologies, robotics, online education, wherever there is a kind of connection digitally in the world, there is an opportunity for our technology to be built into that connection to enable for a deeper emotional understanding.
So the name of this panel is Advanced Technologies, and the reason why you have a VC moderating it, like myself, beyond the fact that I invest in marketing tech pretty heavily, is the fact that machine learning and AI and the ability to leverage intelligent software is becoming increasingly a more important part of ed tech and marketing tech. So with that, in simple to understand, but sufficiently sophisticated, so the power of your technologies comes across. Talk to each of your products in terms of what's the AI and what's the machine learning power, and why are you an advanced tech, and how does it translate for this audience? Nick, why don't I start with you for variety's sake?
Right, so our technology is based on the presence of webcams or optical sensors. Wherever there's a smart device that has that ability to collect that image data, it has the ability to bring that data in, assess it for what those movements and gestures actually mean from an emotional standpoint, bring it to the database that we have of over 12 billion emotion data points to understand the relevance and interpretation of that emotion data point, and then bring it back to the platform that it was collected in. So in the sense of a marketing tech scenario, we have clients that work with our technology in building apps to personally engage or seemingly personally engage with the user by being more in tune with their emotional status as they're engaging with the content, and having that experience then become more personal in the process. And the same goes for gaming environments where developers are working with our technology to create a more personalized gaming experience by having the ability to understand the emotional response that user is conveying during the gaming experience. And again, it's based on collecting that data, combining that data into our large database, and then having the machine learn from it, become more accurate and more insightful as each experience concludes.
And Nick, how are you observing the individual, the consumer actually engaged? So where are the sensors embedded? Give us the consumer applicability scenario.
Right, so I mean, we are a technology that gets built into our brand clients and our gaming clients and our client-facing platforms.
So what is Adidas, for example, or Hershey or Bendy? What are those brands?
Right, so Hershey, for instance, is using our technology in an in-store environment where they have what's called the Smile Sampler. And they have a kiosk set up in a number of stores around the country where someone can walk up and look in to the messaging that Hershey is displaying. A call to action by Hershey is show us a smile, show how you're feeling today. If you're feeling down, there's a certain type of chocolate delivered through the kiosk. If you're feeling up, there's a certain type of chocolate that's delivered through the kiosk. So it's just another method of, instead of having someone in the store kind of interacting, it's a machine that's actually interacting with the customer as they're having that retail experience.
Yep. Persado?
Yes, so there are about 2 trillion ad impressions served every month across digital channels. Most of the CMOs in this country are in the process or already invested in how to reach and target customers. They forgot one element, which is they're talking to humans. And when you talk to humans, the message, the sales pitch is critical. What we have done is we parameterize marketing language. We have over 1 million tagged words and phrases across different variables that constitute every message that is sent out: emotions, product descriptions, call to actions. And we combine them with algorithms to drive or inspire more of the behavior that the brands wants to achieve. So you can imagine American Express wanting more people to sign up for a certain card, or it could have been, hopefully, when we talk, Brian trying to get more people to donate. I mean, it doesn't matter what is the action. The fact is that you have today the ability with AI and algorithms to generate language that is designed to drive action and have the feedback loop on digital channels to make sure that it's always at its best. That's the essence of what we do. The algorithms are a bit complex, but happy to talk more about it if somebody's interested.
And Frank?
Yeah, so SocialFlow, basically it's the last mile of the equation where you give us what you want to say and we share it at the right time or make sure it gets delivered to the right spot. And what I mean by that is, say you're a large media company and you have 100 articles that go out on one of your titles a day. We figure out how to sequence them based on what the audience wants. Because a big mistake that people make in marketing in general is that when something's important to you, you want to get it out there and share it. But that's not necessarily going to yield the most for you. You have to share it when the audience wants it. And so you can use these predictive language sets to figure out, it's natural language processing to break it up and figure out not only what you want to say, but sort of what the appetite is for folks out there. And there's a lot of different complicated calculations that go into that. The idea is language is temporal in its association. It's very fluid. 3 years ago, LeBron James, or 4 years ago, LeBron James and Cleveland were tightly bound. It meant he played for Cleveland, building on the sports analogy that Brian was talking about. Soon, when he went to Miami, LeBron James mentioned in conjunction with Cleveland was sort of a weaker tie, and it didn't lend itself to predict as much affinity. It just meant sort of an event that was coming up. And then when he went back, you start to see them appear together. That's one example that happens tens of thousands of times throughout the day, where it opens up these windows and lets you figure out if people are interested in X, they may soon be interested in Y, and it indicates a future maybe predictive point to action. So we're sitting there on top of that, getting data from Facebook, from our click proxy, from Twitter, from all the social networks, and we crunch the language to figure out if I want to share this message, how likely is it to succeed and should I share it?
But underpinning all of your solutions, even though the applicability it could be quite different, is the power of data in whatever form you take it, digest it, whether it's through optical sensors, language, or co-follower behavior, digest it and then make predictions about behavior. And sort of counter to my entire existence, What are we doing to human creativity in that regard? Because if you had agencies or brands, innovating, coming up with creative pieces, journey back in time, it was, you kind of were guessing, you were appealing maybe to that narrow frontal part of your brain, but now we're automating so many pieces of the creative process. And I asked this question in a different panel last year around robotics. But let me ask it again in this context. Are we putting the creative folks out of business, and are we killing our own ingenuity? It's a loaded question.
Sorry about
Anyone can
that.
take it.
Yeah. So the way I like to think about our technology is it's kind of enabling the creativity and the creation process, in the sense of, we've automated this emotional response technology, right? So where a creative expert is in a room, whiteboarding something, prototyping something, walks out of that room and finds colleagues around the office. What do you think? Tell me, how does this grab you? And uses that information to kind of refine and iterate on what the creation is. This essentially collapses that process and allows for that kind of what do you think event to occur kind of like in the moment, in real time, and using that to help inform what can be built on based on that response, on a true emotional, true reaction, to help the creative process move along even faster and further than I think back in the old days of whiteboarding and walking around the office.
Assaf, Frank?
So I would add to that and say there's a difference between targeting and novelty. And part of the reason why everybody came here today is because they thought, maybe the content's interesting to them, but you came to actually source some new ideas and integrate it with what you're thinking. Giving people what they want or what they're targeted and measured to want is probably not a great way to do this. I mean, part of the great thing about living in the world is that stuff happens and you come across it. It's better than what you may have done had you just mapped it out for yourself. And I don't think you should or can put creative people out of business because you need some novelty in that system, right? Like if you just try to just segment and target down to exactly what somebody's behavior said, then the world gets pretty boring and flat.
But Frank, are we not narrowing the field of novelty by, now we can capture emotion through visuals. You can capture it through behavior. You can better influence it and capture it through language. Isn't that, where are these folks making the impact?
Any good trading technology is going to reduce risk, right? So what you want to do is you want to try to get you in the ballpark to help then you select the right answer. But I don't think we're just taking all of the onus off of people to think of new things and live new experiences.
I'll take a deeper stance on that. So first of all, computers did not displace analysts, and our technologies would not displace creatives. I mean, they would just go higher in terms of the decision-making process. Yeah. Second of all, what's the alternative to automation and innovation? Is it staying the same? It means that the Human Genome Project would either take 400 years, or you would need tens of thousands of scientists to complete it, while them not doing other things that advance science. So this is how you need to think about innovation. You need to embrace it and grow with it, because that's the only way for us to improve. Now, specifically for certain tasks, technology can help and do better. If you think about 2 trillion messages a month sent out on channels that are becoming more and more fragmented, whether it's Pinterest and Twitter and others, and you try to capture and drive performance, a machine can do that better. So you need to take a step back and figure out how to use the machine to help you go to the next step. That's how we think of it. And if we displaced any jobs, really, I'm sorry about that.
And this is, ladies and gentlemen, why I stay in business. So let's talk a little bit about the whole notion of now you have the technology, you've built it, taking it to market. What have been the go-to-market strategies for your various companies, and how are you selling, whether it's direct into the brand, to the CMO organization, or through channels? But how's that process working, particularly when figuring out that yet, while there is progress, the CMO is not the most technical person in the organization. Usually they're coming up the learning curve, they're figuring out the stack, but we're a far cry from their tech savvy. How does that play out in all of your businesses? Go ahead.
I'll start this time. So the CMO actually becomes the guy who is more
Or girl.
tech savvy, and we'll talk about the next maybe 5-10 years. But it's a trajectory from chief data type of guy to CMO. How we sell to them? If you come to a CMO, you tell them that you can inspire each and one of their customers by using algorithms to determine exactly what inspires them to act for every specific product. They usually listen because it's interesting. First of all, they think it's magic because many people do not think that a machine can create language that performs better than what a human would create. Obviously, we don't create poets or poems. We don't create jokes, but we create communication for a certain objective, which is getting people to act. And in that context, we're selling revenue, but in a very different way by allowing or telling the CMO, what if you could whisper to each and one of our customers across each and one of the digital channels you're using today, the right language that inspires that human to act. And that creates a conversation. So it's a direct sale.
And that's at the 30,000 feet to pique their interest in the first half of the meeting. But
Right,
then what
then-
about the second half when they're trying to figure out how you fit into their stack and who are you integrating with? How does that play out? Board meetings.
Usually because it's innovative, it's proof of value.
Yeah.
So we suggest a proof of value. Give us a campaign of yours, an email, a landing page, a display ad, a Facebook ad. You do your thing, whatever best you have today, we did ours. It doesn't require any integration for the first iterations. We give you the content, you send it as an A/B test, you see what performs better. It performs better, we continue the conversation. It doesn't, never happened, but if it happens, I will tell you.
And Nick, you're slightly different because your technology gets embedded not only in marketing, but in
Right.
robotics and other platforms. So how does it pan out for you? And it may be different from vertical, from space to space, but
So we make our technology available for free for an evaluation period. We essentially have SDKs and APIs that developers become aware of, start working with, and take into their organizations. And many times that's how we're landing deals. The Hershey example, for instance, Adidas recently, and Bentley. Like, these are all opportunities for us that came in through the developer layer, where someone was tinkering around with, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we brought this emotion capability through using the optical sensor or the webcam into the app or into this campaign or into this experience that we're creating for potential clients, and then literally bringing that discussion higher and higher in the organization to having the CMO become aware of it, understand the capability and how it could be used within their strategy, and that's kind of how we're
and so
licensing the technology.
does that imply that your monetization model is both licensing and campaign driven, or how does it play out?
It's mainly licensing.
Mainly
right?
licensing, okay.
So we have another business where we have a SaaS platform that derives revenue through just the licensing of the platform for the ability of measuring emotional response to creative and allowing our brand clients through the channel to be able to kind of include emotional response into their overall assessment of how a creative is working. That's one side of the business. The more exciting part of the business that we're more focused on now and really seeing growth occurring is around that licensing of just getting the SDK, seeding it into the market, letting developers go where they want to go with it, and then putting licensing deals together on the back of that.
Got it. Frank?
So we work with, maybe the top 200 media companies, and then brands, we sort of match them up with that. And it's this SaaS Plus model where, we have the publishing platform that optimizes the deployment of messages, and then brands can amplify messages, and that's a sort of commission-based. And the way we sold it, we've gone through a few iterations. We used to, somebody would come in, and we'd get them up and running, and then they'd ask a question, well, how does that do that? And I'd stupidly give the answer, well, here's how it does it. Get up on a whiteboard and start drawing out the math, which is the wrong way to do that. Like what we learned pretty painfully is that you actually have to show the benefits of what it does. But then the benefits are you don't have to work as much to get success, and it lets you free up that labor to go do things that are useful, and it ties it up and tracks it for you so that it actually works when you sleep, and that's a much easier sell than here's a bunch of math, because I I write the algorithms, and I don't want to hear myself explain them. So.
Role of agencies, and this is, I'm throwing a question, we didn't talk about this previously. Do agencies play a role for you, and are they that third wheel that you just kind of got to say, okay, because the brand says so? What's going on with agencies, and how do they impact startups? I certainly have a point of view, but I don't think you want to hear it. Go ahead, Frank.
So some agencies are good. That's the thing. Some are good, and some of them are not. But
What makes them good?
the ones that are willing to use data, the worst thing is when you sit down in a meeting with somebody from an agency and you explain what it did and how it worked, and immediately they're like, well, I have people and we're going to do that. Well, no, you're not, because if you just look at data, you tried to do that and it outperformed you, so why don't we work together? That conversation happens probably 70% of the time. 30% of the agencies, though, sit down and say, well, I understand how we think. My competition is going to go out there and try to muscle this through and fumble it, and I'm going to work with you. So we work with a select group of agencies, and we just pour all of the coals into that, getting them up and ramped and stuff like that. I wish there was a better way to do it, but that's the only way that we found to successfully work with agencies is you have 4 or 5 really good ones, and you go as far and as fast as you can with them and hope that everybody catches on. But, you know, that's, I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's the truth.
Assaf?
Yes. So we go to the CMO, and the CMO tells the agency to work with us. A variety. If you think about American Express, they have maybe 50 agencies, and they're all doing something for Amex, and we come in, we say, we'll generate the language, and obviously there is initially some conflict, but they work with us eventually. We did not yet develop the channel or the agency channel because there is perceived conflict in terms of the agency is getting paid to drive content for the company, and suddenly if they represent us, they need to pay us a part of what they get out of a customer. But that eventually will go away when in the next, with us and with other companies, AI will drive more and more content. There is no way out of it. It's the sound of inevitability. Some portion of content will come from machines, and agencies will work with that. They work with it today, but they don't embrace it as part of their business model yet. If somebody here wants to embrace it and try, we'd be happy to accommodate.
And there's no such thing as a missed opportunity for a sales call, and you just got the first
No.
one. Nick, do you work much with agencies?
Yeah, I mean, we love creative agencies. We love digital experience and digital design agencies, people that are really looking to kind of do something new and innovative. They look at our technology as a creative tool, right? And those are really fun conversations because there's just some wild things that can be done, and there's some really kind of ideas out there that are kind of being inhibited or held back because technology isn't there yet to allow them to be fully developed. And so we kind of see ourselves as being an aid in some way to helping some of those ideas come to light. WPP is an investor in our business, and they're very much focused on helping us get into their agency portfolio as well, and that's taking hold now as we speak. So those are fun conversations.
That's great. Let's shift the focus a little bit to consumers and staying with this whole notion that because of the power of machine learning AI, you're actually accumulating huge amounts of data. What are the implications for privacy? I mean, you're understanding emotion, you're making predictions about language, you're making predictions again about behavior. I'm certain I'm not the first one to pose the privacy question, so why don't we actually tackle that, and any one of you can start.
I'll take it. I mean, we have a pretty broad coverage. We did 140 billion in Facebook reach, so basically last month, and we figured it out that I think 1 of every 3 people in the world with a smartphone interacted with our content. I think
1 in 3 people in the world with a smartphone.
With a smartphone.
Okay.
We even know what the folks in Pyongyang are reading. But the thing is, you don't want to target people. Well, we don't target individuals, which makes it a little bit easier for us to be good actors. We would anyway, but the concept is, I think the value is finding clusters of people based on conditions that they share with other people that are performing. And it's not even necessary for us to know the identities of the folks that we're working with. We just want to target the opportunity. I think these guys probably have a much more disciplined approach to not, sort of running afoul of the individual's privacy. But for our business, it's not even necessary to know who the person is. We just use the language and the conditions by which they act, and then find other people like them doing the similar thing.
Assaf?
Well, there is the concept of PII, which is personal identifiable information. We do not need to know that. We need a unique ID if we wanted to create something we call emotional segment of one. We do not target also. It's the company who targets whoever they want to target, and we then apply language for that person or group of people. But it's a funny story because just last week, one of our financial services companies was a bit worried. They said, well, what if there will be an article in the Wall Street Journal saying that we talk to women differently than men? I said, so what? I mean, you took Tina Fey to Bjorsen, and you can imagine who the company is. Tina Fey with her family, with pictures and all that. Is that a message for football fans that are male in pubs? Not really. So they are doing it today, but there is always a concern, and you need to take care of that. The first level is technical, PII. The second is the brand approach. Do I want to do it or not? As we don't target, it's less applicable to us. Finding people is slightly more intrusive than any way you found them. Now you send them a message, is that message for them or geared towards drive them to act? But it is always something that is an issue in terms of perception.
Any thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, our technology is generally used with explicit opt-ins, right? And by that I mean someone's always aware that there's a camera being turned on. If it's a panelist for a kind of market research purpose, they are being incentivized and they're being told, right? If it's, for instance, a recent partner of ours developed this really cool live streaming app, right? So they built a live streaming app that allows them to be able to send out their stream, and at the same time, whoever's on the other end receiving their stream has the opportunity to turn on their cam and allow for naturally created emojis to be returned back to the sender of the stream. So no more typing in or searching for the emoji that captures your emotion. It's literally just looking at your face as you're watching the stream and sending the emotion out. Now, clearly that person knows this is happening, so again, we consider that explicit opt-in. And you can find examples of that across the board wherever our technology is used.
What about this notion of throwing all the data in data networks and open data networks? Have you given any thought? There's lots of talks sort of from the innovators. Tim Berners-Lee and I, Nick was at a session, talked a bit about that. The power of taking the data, it can still be proprietary, but making it open data networks so you can buy and cross-sell and cross-mine information. How do you feel about that notion, and is it even on the roadmaps?
You ever see the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? Where at the end, everybody's waiting to see the other guy take the first shot. Well, that's pretty much where that is. I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but you go first.
Assaf, you've been eager to go first. Are you going first on this one?
On this one, well, after we exit, we're willing to give anything. But I think that there are platforms today. I mean, DMP platforms that actually
Beyond there, yeah.
In that context of some commercial engagement, to make it available to anybody, would love to. So imagine that we score the entire US with what language would allow you to better inspire a given type of person. Mom, Southeast, certain income, certain whatever variables define there. We would love to make that available. Obviously not for free as we are for profit, but share it with everybody, yes, absolutely.
You already kind of give it for free, at least the technology.
Sorry?
I said you kind of already give the technology part for free.
Yeah, and ideally speaking, sure, that's something we totally get behind. I think the lawyers would have, a lot of things to say about it. But I think in the spirit of innovation and open sourcing, that's definitely something we can get behind.
I have a couple more questions, but probably at the very end, I'd like to make sure that I'm capturing the questions from the audience. I'd like to open it up to you. Go ahead. Is there a mic?
Yeah, for Assaf.
So when you guys are basically running your A/B tests, building the database of insights around what copy moves people, do you run into data scarcity issues, and do you do anything novel to kind of overcome that?
Yes. So we don't run an A/B test. The A/B test is run by a company to validate that our technology works or actually generated language that performs better. But there are algorithms from statistics called experimental design. So it's a niche in statistics that allow you to be very efficient with relatively few data points. And this you can use to get a lot of information with a small sample with not a lot of data points. It's about between 1,000 and 10,000 times more efficient than an A/B test, to give you a sense. And it's available. We just apply it to language, which is very innovative, but it's a category of algorithms that is available for many other disciplines. For language, it's a bit awkward. You need to make language understandable by a machine, which means that you need to create variables out of a sentence, and then you can apply that. Does that answer your question?
Gentleman in the back, go ahead.
Are you using any cognitive computing programming methodologies, or are you sticking to more standard structured algorithms?
So we have computational linguistics to harvest language and tag it, and some deep learning to extract emotion out of language and cluster it. To generate language, it's a structure, comes from also linguistics called a grammar, the formal structure of a grammar that allows you to generate language for a Facebook ad, to generate language for a landing page, to generate language for an email. So from that perspective, it's not really cognitive science. It's more computational linguistic algorithm plus formal language structures to generate language.
Was that question just for Assaf or across the board? For all three of them. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry?
The cognitive question was actually to the whole panel.
Yeah, so we are strictly we are focused on the gestures and the outward expressions. So I guess the short answer is no.
So I'll just add on to what Assaf said, and we use similar techniques. We mainly spend a lot of what we're doing deconstructing into permutations and then matching them. So there's this other set that we go through where we will actually create permutations that don't normally come out of the type of language algorithm set that you'd normally do to construct something that would make sense to a human. And we do it to sort of test how the radius of how far away you are from something that we want to share. And it does become pretty useful, especially in situations where you share a lot of overlapping nodes and you use similar language. It helps you figure out what the real window of viability is. I mean, it helps us figure out if you're going to be on that topic, if it's worth trading it to you. But mainly, it's the same set of techniques. It's pretty standard set of ways that you apply language to sort of try to make it make sense. And then it's the application of the sequence and what you do with it is really the art.
Any other questions? Okay, why don't I give you my two last questions. Let's fast forward to the future and focus on where do you think AI and machine learning, deep learning, however you want to define it, for marketing tech, given the audience and advertising, will be in 5 years from now? And what will the impact be in 20 years from now? Let's project to the future. Nick?
I don't know.
Oh, you're supposed to
No,
be a
no.
visionary
I'm
startup
kidding.
CEO.
No,
Come on.
my view is that the experience that people have with digital content and devices of any kind is going to be more personalized, more in tune, and more intuitive in terms of understanding what the user is truly feeling, and allowing for that experience to then be kind of adjusted accordingly. And I think this whole notion of mass broadcast and broadcasting messages is going to go away. And I think the relationship that people have with their devices is going to be more personalized. And I think the technologies that are being represented here on the panel and the sensory signals that come into play to help that along are going to play a major role.
And you're speaking of devices. Let me just probe on that for a second. Do you think it'll be a world of devices, or do you think it'll be a world of pervasive intelligent connectivity? So you might have one device so that convergence occurs, or you might have multiple devices all distributed, but you don't necessarily need to carry anything physically like you do today with your phone.
Well, I guess it's depending on the environment, right? If you're driving, that device is your car. And if you're walking around the street, maybe the device is your watch. But there's always going to be some device with you, and it basically becomes transferable amongst those physical objects where the AI sits and where the experience comes from.
So basically, a collision or a come together of IoT, maybe even robotics,
Right.
and pervasive connectivity.
Right.
Assaf?
So I'm not sure about 20 years, 5 years, probably attribution will get solved, finally, to the level of did I watch a billboard or not, whether it's sensory information that comes in to tell me or GPS technology that allows me to do that. I think that the CMO will have maybe 5 to 10 times the budget they have today to buy technologies or to leverage them. I think the CMO, I'm talking about the CMO perspective, with these technologies becomes something like a chief experience officer, because if you think today, if I had a crappy flight and I don't call the airline, I actually tweet about it, is it customer care or marketing? It becomes an experience actually, and these are distributed experience from across channels and individuals, and to actually harness that and do something with that, I think that the technology will allow us to communicate one-to-one to manage these interactions as an experience. And of course, on the agency side, I think that agencies will become more product companies. So every Silicon Valley style, every interaction will be better than the previous one because they have to. It's just a survival act, in my opinion.
Boy, a lot of statements in that. Let me pick on one and give you a data point. So we hear so much about security, cybersecurity, and how much money goes into that. Today's CMO's marketing tech budget, so what they spend on technology, is already 5 times bigger than what the enterprise spends on security and cybersecurity. So it's pretty gigantic. So it's fascinating that you think it's going to be even 5 to 10 times bigger than what it is today. Is it because the CMO is the new CRO for brands?
To some extent that, and they span across revenue, experience, and all the technologies that allow them to reach that level of performance.
And will the agencies become product? They may attempt, but are you saying that they will succeed to go from a service model to a product model and effectively become tech companies? Because that's what you're saying.
I think they will become probably tech. Everything I say here is obviously may be completely wrong, but
It's okay.
I think they will become tech-enabled and just maybe not a product company, but product-type service to a level where you can take data from any engagement that you have and make the next one slightly better. Whatever technologies allow you to do that, whether it's on the creative side, consulting side.
And do you think today's incumbents can do that, or do you think some new agency product-driven will disrupt that? How often do you see incumbents successfully disrupting themselves?
Competition will drive the big ones to evolve, and the small ones will get bought, I guess, which is the nature of the business. But I'm not sure if it's a disruption. I think it's a process of embracing more and more capabilities and just applying them faster for better income.
Yeah.
Outcome.
Hard for incumbents usually to do, but I've tortured you now for one panel. Frank?
So I actually tried to come up with an answer for this one. I think we'll solve the attribution. We'll also get better at segmenting based on everything, including context. And that context is important because if you map it out 20 years, you're going to use technology to augment whatever context you're in, I think. And just taking like a real live example of maybe applying some of the technologies up here, you can take Nick's technology where we could look out at the audience and know, using similar technology, like what you actually think of what we're doing and how successful we're being in reaching you. And if I could know if I'm actually connecting with you in real time based on the way you're interacting and the way your face and the body language goes, then I can actually tailor my message to think of better ways to connect with you. Your car will be an extension of the experience, and it's probably going to drive for you. So it's sort of like you offload the time and then you do other things there. I think technology pretty much always, like technological revolutions always seem to destroy existing capital structures and replace them with better ones. So that makes it really hard to predict exactly what it's going to look like, but it's almost a guarantee that as we move towards the technology moves towards us, and you're not going to have to carry as many extraneous things, but you're going to plug into different contexts, and based on probably some type of unique identity of some sort, you'll actually trigger an extension of your existing capabilities through that technology.
And I tend to concur, and if where venture capital money is an indication of perhaps where new companies in the space will emerge, we're all focused on leveraging machine learning to understand audiences, to engage them, to know, I think the amount of data, the big data term, which has gotten overused and tired by now, it's nothing. I think we're going to see multiple orders of magnitude around that, in part because of these technologies, and in part because I think a lot of the unknown unknowns will become known knowns, and then we'll try to figure out the next layer, and whether that is narrow intelligence or the sci-fi piece, which I won't even touch on. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for partaking, and all of you for listening. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.